Have you ever been so hurt by someone's rejection that you found yourself grasping for words, any words to explain, to defend, to hold on, and yet nothing came? Just silence, a silence not born of defeat, but of something deeper, something unshakable. There's a strange kind of power in that stillness, a quiet that speaks louder than 1,000 explanations. We live in a world that begs us to respond, to justify ourselves, to speak our pain, but sometimes the most stoic thing you can do is say absolutely nothing. Not out of bitterness, not to provoke guilt, but because in the silence, you reclaim your power. You remember who you are, and the one who dismissed you. That silence doesn't just echo, it rattles their very world. This episode isn't about silence as revenge, it's about silence as strength. As a return to your center, a mirror held up to those who took you for granted, and a path back to your own peace, because the absence of your voice might just be the loudest thing they hear. Let's begin. 1. Your silence doesn't punish, it reveals. There's a moment after rejection when every fiber of you wants to speak, to ask why, to plead for clarity, to fill the space with something, anything. That will soften the sting. But then you stay quiet. And in that quiet, something extraordinary happens, not to them but to you. The silence becomes a mirror, and the reflection is not of weakness, but of truth. Silence doesn't punish. That's the mistake people often make. They think your silence is a tactic, a cold shoulder, a way to strike back. But silence isn't about them. It's about you. It doesn't carry the energy of revenge, but the energy of revelation. Because when you stop explaining yourself, when you resist the urge to beg for closure or recognition, what you're actually doing is letting the truth rise. And that truth often speaks volumes. It reveals who really had the power all along. It shows who was willing to speak with honesty and who only spoke to control. It lays bare who cared and who only pretended to. Because when words fall away, what remains is behavior, intent, presence, or absence. The Stoics understood this deeply. They didn't see silence as withdrawal or surrender. They saw it as clarity. Epictetus once taught that we should listen more than we speak, because nature gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth. But it goes beyond that. In choosing not to respond, you are not punishing the other person. You are simply refusing to participate in the illusion anymore. You are saying, without words, I will not invest energy in what no longer honors me. And for the one who rejected you, the silence isn't loud. It's deafening because it doesn't give them what they expect. No protest, no anger, no emotional validation. Just the stillness of someone who no longer needs to fight for what should have been freely given. Think about this. Sometimes the greatest shift in a relationship comes not when someone says something powerful, but when someone chooses to say nothing at all. That silence forces reflection. It creates space, and in that space, the other person is left to sit with their own choices. You're not disappearing, you're stepping back. Not to punish, but to protect, to observe, to reflect, and most of all, to let the truth speak for itself. Because in your silence, everything they failed to see suddenly becomes clear. 2. He who didn't value your presence will feel the weight of your absence. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't shout. It doesn't beg, doesn't chase, doesn't plead to be seen. It simply walks away, quietly, firmly, and lets the echo of that absence do the talking. Because here is a truth most people learn the hard way: those who didn't appreciate your presence will eventually be haunted by the silence you leave behind. When someone takes you for granted, they expect you to always be there. They get used to your kindness, your patience, your steady loyalty, as if these were obligations, not choices. And so, when you go silent, when your voice no longer fills the space they once took for granted, it confuses them. At first, they might convince themselves it's nothing, but day by day the absence grows louder, not because you're making a scene, but because you're no longer part of theirs. The Stoics would tell us, don't concern yourself with what people think of your silence. What matters is that you remain true to your nature, and sometimes your nature calls for distance, for quiet, for the retreat that brings peace. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reminded himself that if someone doesn't see the value of a thing, that doesn't make the thing any less valuable. The same goes for people. Just because someone didn't honor your worth doesn't mean you weren't worthy. It simply means they weren't capable of recognizing what they had. What happens next is not up to you. You've withdrawn, not as an act of drama, but as an act of dignity. And in time they may feel it, not just the emptiness of your physical presence, but the lack of emotional safety you once offered, the absence of your quiet understanding, the missing warmth of your compassion, the stability they thought would always be there. Regret has a way of arriving silently. It doesn't show up all at once. It trickles in through quiet nights, through familiar places, through reminders they didn't expect. And that's when they begin to feel it, the weight of what they dismissed, the gravity of what they lost. You don't have to remind them. You don't have to send messages, explain your silence, or hope they notice. Life has a way of making the right echoes find their way back. And in your absence, the lessons they failed to learn in your presence might finally begin to take root. You were not invisible. They were just blind. And now that you're gone, the blindness lifts, and they're left facing the space you used to fill. 3. Resisting the urge to speak is an act of power. There is a moment right after the sting of rejection when your mind floods with words you wish you could say. You rehearse responses, vows, defenses, maybe even clever comebacks meant to prove a point. You think of everything they missed, everything they misunderstood, and you burn with the urge to make them see it, to hear you, to feel just a fraction of what you felt. But you don't speak, you don't send the message, you don't chase, and that restraint, that is power.